The 103-day war is over, right? And man, the sheer volume of political spin hitting the airwaves right now is literally dizzying. I'm Justin Kace, and in this explainer, look, we aren't interested in the carefully curated press releases. We're going to mercilessly tear apart the spin and just do a full, honest autopsy on this entire conflict. Because you really got to ask yourself, how does a war that was supposed to totally neutralize a geopolitical adversary end with the United States essentially paying its enemy $160 billion? Well, let's dive into who actually won, who lost, and what actually just happened.
Naturally, the politicians, they're already out there taking their victory laps. Take this absolute gem of a quote, confidently stating, "And we've won." Let me say, we've won. It's been won. We won. We defeated them. Honestly, it is a masterclass in declaring absolute, undeniable victory. I mean, say it enough times and it becomes true, right? Well, the only problem is, we actually have the receipts.
So, who actually won? To answer that, we're definitely not relying on cable news talking heads. No, we're going straight to the literal peace treaty. Yes, the actual signed agreement to end the war, which, hilariously enough, was helpfully uploaded to the internet as this wildly blurry PDF by Iran's 71-year-old president. But peak boomer energy aside, this document is exactly what we need. It allows us to systematically cross-check all this breathless media spin against cold, hard reality.
Let's pull up the digital blackboard and get our scorecard going. We're going to evaluate the three main parties in this war. And let's start with the United States. Now, the U.S. went into this with three massive, open-ended war goals that supposedly justified launching major combat operations in the first place. Goal 1, end Iran's nuclear program. Goal 2, destroy their missile capabilities. And Goal 3, execute what everyone kept calling the Venezuelan option. Let's go ahead and grade the reality here.
Okay, starting with the nuclear program. Politicians have been on TV claiming this program is completely destroyed. Done. Dusted. But if you actually read Article 9 of the treaty, that blurry PDF, it explicitly states, pending a final deal, Iran will maintain the current status quo of its nuclear program. I mean, just think about that for a second. A war launched specifically to erase a nuclear program forever ended with a formal, signed agreement literally endorsing its exact status quo. Absolutely wild. Moving on to Goal 2, destroying Iran's missiles. Now, for years, the hawkish demand in D.C. was absolute zero missiles, period. At the start of the war, the promise was literally to raise their missile industry to the ground. But post-war? The new U.S. position basically states that because other countries have missiles, it's a little bit unfair for them not to have some. Guys, we have literally transitioned from a policy of total destruction to this hilarious new fairness doctrine, where the U.S. officially concedes a sovereign nation deserves the tools of its own defense. You can't make this up.
Then there's Goal 3, which was really the political centerpiece, the Venezuela option. The playbook here is simple and, honestly, pretty audacious. You kidnap a hostile leader, you install a compliant puppet, and then you just declare immediate victory without having to actually change the fabric of the nation itself. And sure, they did manage to kill Iran's leader, but power just smoothly transitioned to his son. The regime itself, it didn't change at all. But hey, surely the US forced them to bend to their will financially, right?
Well, consider this massive figure, $160 billion. Under the final provisions of the treaty, the U.S. agreed to issue waivers for Iranian crude oil, which basically opens up about $60 billion a year in revenue. And on top of that, they agreed to unfreeze up to $100 billion of restricted assets all over the globe. So the U.S. is essentially writing a 9-figure check to its supposed enemy to stop fighting and getting zero actual geopolitical concessions in return. I gotta be honest, that doesn't sound like America, Venezuela, and Iran. It kind of sounds like Iran, Venezuela, and America. And this brilliantly illustrates the final U.S. scorecard. End nuclear program? Fail. Destroy missiles? Fail. Venezuela option? Big fail. It is a brutal, objective, 0-for-3 failure that cost billions of dollars and basically cratered global markets.
Now let's see how this all builds when we shift gears and look at our second major player, Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had his own quiet, decades-long ambitions for this conflict. His goals? Full regime change in Iran to totally reshape the Middle East, occupying South Lebanon under the convenient cover of the wider war, and, this one's largely unspoken but widely understood, saving his own political career and staying out of jail.
So, on regime change, the result is crystal clear. Netanyahu really hoped this U.S.-led war would just topple the Iranian government like dominoes. Instead, the government is arguably more secure right now than it's ever been. And worse for Israel's agenda, the U.S. leadership completely pivoted. Just contrast Netanyahu's grand dreams with the U.S. president's post-war assessment, where he's suddenly calling Iranian leaders very rational and nice to deal with. Regime change isn't just a fail here, it has been permanently taken off the table.
Goal 2. Occupying southern Lebanon to establish a security zone. Now, Israel is currently succeeding at the military occupation part, seizing land while the world was distracted by the bigger war. But look closely at the fine print that Iran slyly slipped into Article 1 of the U.S. treaty. It explicitly calls for the termination of military operations, quote, including in Lebanon. Now, Israel didn't sign this, obviously, but Iran cleverly made the U.S. promise to force a halt, which completely lays the groundwork for some massive diplomatic friction between the U.S. and Israel moving forward.
And what about Netanyahu's personal goal? Did this war save his political brand and keep him out of the corruption courts? Well, the polling is absolutely devastating. When asked if his conduct benefited or harmed Israeli interests, 52% of Israelis say it harmed them. Compare that to just 24% who say it benefited. This war completely backfired on his whole brand of being the ultimate security hawk, who could just bend the U.S. to his will.
So, let's lock in Israel's scorecard. Regime change? Massive fail. Occupying South Lebanon? We'll call that mixed. They physically have the troops there, but man, that diplomatic clock is ticking loudly. And saving Netanyahu? Fail. It's a mostly red, totally botched board for sure.
Okay, which brings us to the real climax of this autopsy. Let's pull up Iran's scorecard, because the sheer geopolitical audacity we are about to witness here is, honestly, it's fascinating. As the target of this massive attack, Iran's goals were extract reconstruction money, officially take control of the Strait of Hormuz, and establish permanent deterrence against the United States. And guys, how they played this is wild.
So we already established they secured a massive financial windfall, right? So goal 1 is a giant checkmark. But goal 2, controlling the Strait of Hormuz, this is an absolute masterclass in diplomatic trolling. The U.S. goes out and publicly claims the strait is now open and toll-free. But Iran claims they absolutely are not charging tolls. No. They are simply going to design and collect necessary fees for services. It is a hilarious semantic loophole. They are basically setting up an easy pass lane on one of the most vital global waterways on Earth and just calling it an administration fee.
And if you think that's just media spin, let's go back and read the actual text from our favorite Blurry PDF. Article 5 literally states, no charge for 60 days only. I mean, that strongly implies the meter starts running on day 61, right? Furthermore, it explicitly states Iran will define the future administration and maritime services in the strait. The treaty literally hands the administrative keys and the right to collect all those lucrative fees right over to Iran. They proved they could shut off 1/5 of the world's oil, and now they legally get to run the toll booth. Just incredible. So let's complete the board. Reconstruction money? Win. Control of Hormuz? Win. Establish deterrence? Huge win. It is a clean sweep. They survived an unprecedented attack from a global superpower, completely exhausted the U.S. military's appetite for regime change, and got paid billions of dollars in unfrozen assets and oil revenues just to sit back down.
When you finally strip away all the frantic cable news shouting and just look at the raw outcomes on paper, we're left with a chilling, bottom-line assessment of a completely new Middle East. This 103-day war resulted in the official U.S. acceptance of Iran's missiles, the absolute death of Israel's regime change agenda, an ongoing, highly volatile Israeli occupation in Lebanon, unprecedented Iranian control over the global oil choke point at Hormuz, and finally, Iran successfully establishing real deterrence over America.
You really have to ask yourself, stepping back from all the political theater and just looking at the sheer cost of this failure. After spending billions to wage a war, cratering the global economy, failing every single stated military objective, and ultimately paying the target $160 billion to sign a piece of paper that basically gives them exactly what they wanted, what American president is ever going to try this again? The media can spin it however they want, but the reality of global deterrence just fundamentally shifted forever.